Taoiseach, first of all, I want to say to you, Taoiseach, that what I'm to raise now is a legacy issue which affects all parties who have been in government over the last number of years. So I'm not doing this in any political point-scoring manner, and I would accept that previous governments were equally culpable in this regard. And it's in relation to the legacy issue of how the state dealt with child sex abuse in day schools, in national schools. The state fought against any idea of culpability for that until Louise O'Keeffe won a major breakthrough case in the European Court of Human Rights in 2014. And you'll be familiar with that case. And I want to put it to you, Taoiseach, that the state's response to that European Court of Human Rights judgment has been a failure, and a significant failure, and leaves a lot to be desired. And the state did introduce an ex gratia payment scheme. In many respects, the limits were too low, but also the prior complaint expedient that was put in has effectively debarred a lot from seeking justice. Only 7 settlements so far have been reached out of about 210 cases, and those cases are still going through the courts. I recently met a victim and who has been involved in this situation for quite some time, of horrific abuse at the hands of a Christian brother in a school. The abuser was subsequently convicted. Okay, so there's no doubt about the issue, and indeed was convicted of other abuse cases as well. And there are quite a number of other victims out there at the moment, Taoiseach. Now, this man went through horrific abuse, has been up and down through the courts and the religious orders, and has received absolutely no compensation, no cent, nothing from the state. And recently in the High Court, because many of these people discontinued their cases when the Supreme Court ruled that the state didn't have an obligation, the High Courts will not uphold their rights now to pursue it in law. And indeed, Judge Barrett made such a ruling. But he also said in his statement that the Irish people, and I quote, this at the end of the court case, the High Court, with their great and proper sense of justice, may well conclude that the path of rightness in this matter should lead ultimately to a different end. He added, as an Irishman, I would respectfully agree. Essentially, Taoiseach, what has been going on has been quite, in my view, unacceptable. I know yourself, after the Ryan report reported, you said that the response of the state should draw together all the generosity, sensitivity and compassion that should have been shown to survivors when they were children. And I think you went on to say that Ireland should become a world leader in reconciliation and reparation. I think by any objective standard, Taoiseach, looking at how this case was dealt with and how these cases, about 210, according to Richard Bruton, the Minister of Education, has said recently in our reply, there's a finite number. And either through the Criminal Injuries Tribunal or some mechanism, I would implore you to work, and I'm willing to be open and responsive to try and get a mechanism to ensure that the victim that I met and others would be duly responded to and properly responded to by the state.
Taoiseach.
Well, I know that you raised this out of a sense of seriousness, because it is ultimately the most personally invasive, sensitive issue that could arise. I remember meeting Louise O'Keeffe with Minister O'Sullivan at the time when she was Minister for Education, and there were a huge file on that, leaving aside the courage of Louise O'Keeffe in pursuing her case to the European Court. I don't know how many victims of sexual abuse there are there have been over the years in the primary system. No more than the secondary system, I assume. We had the redress scheme. We had the case of all the Magdalens. Not that there was sexual abuse in the vast majority of cases. There is the Mother and Baby Home report coming before the Minister for Children as well, which we'll have to see what that means. I can't recall all the details of the file in this case, but your question is, can something be done about this? I've no idea of the scale of what might be involved here, but I need to read the detail of the file and the legal outcomes here. People who are abused have to live with that for all of their lives, and it's a horrific issue to have to contend with every waking moment. Now, I don't want to go beyond that, because to commit to something that I haven't the full facts or details about wouldn't be appropriate on the floor of the Dáil here. People have been abused, sexually abused as children. It's a horrific crime, and obviously those who perpetrate such crimes should be brought before justice if they're still around. To go back the distance involved here, Ceann probably would present an enormous scale and an enormous challenge. Deputy Martin's made a point. I'll have to look at the scale of what might be involved here, and to answer your question to see whether anything might be possible. But I don't want to give a commitment without focusing on the potential scale of what's here.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Martin, you have a minute.
Taoiseach, to be helpful, Minister Bruton in July, I think in 2016, in Leader's Question, quoted a figure of 210 victims who are currently going through the courts. So there is a sense here that there is a finite number that can be dealt with. As late as this summer, Taoiseach, some of these victims were threatened with legal costs. From the victim's perspective, the state is adversarial the whole way through on this, even where convictions have been secured against the abusers. By any objective yardstick or analysis of it, and particularly given that 17-judge European Court made it clear the state was liable, the sense is the state is welching on that liability, trying to circumvent it, and is not being holistic, generous, or following through in the spirit that most people in the House would have thought would have been the order of the day. And I would put it to you, Taoiseach, I know you are extremely busy, and I say I do this in a non-political way, because I think everybody in the House would look at this and say, can we look afresh at this, look at the cases involved and say we should be approaching, as a state, this far differently than we are now.
Thank you, Deputy.
Too punitive and too adversarial against the individuals concerned. And they've been to hell and back, Taoiseach. That's all I'll say to you.
Thank you, Deputy.
To hell and back as individuals.
Taoiseach.
Yeah, see, you mentioned that there are 7 out of 210 that have been settled. That's 210 that are before the courts now. But you have no idea of the numbers who might wish to come forward and say, I was sexually abused in school X or Y by teacher or person X or Y. You have no idea of the scale of that. And I think in the process, when the state dealt with the Louise O'Keeffe case on the 28th of January 2014, that judgment was issued, and the state made awards both in respect of pecuniary and non-pecuniary damages and costs and expenses. It also agreed in December of that year that out-of-court settlements would be offered to those extant cases of school child sexual abuse being brought against the state, where the cases came within the terms of the ECHR judgment and satisfied the statute of limitations. And in that regard, the State Claims Agency, which manages such cases on behalf of the state, has made a settlement offers which have been accepted, as you say, in 6 cases. In July 2015, the government approved proposals to offer ex gratia payments of up to a maximum of €84,000 to those who initiated legal proceedings in such cases against the state, but who subsequently discontinued their claims against the state, and where similarly the circumstances of the claims came within the terms of the ECHR judgment, and where the claims were not statute barred prior to the proceedings being discontinued. I'll follow through on that.